Hi, I'm David Hickey from interest.co.nz, and welcome to Andy Bray, who is Regional Manager for Business Banking at Kiwibank. Andy, good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Bernard.
If I'm coming to my bank manager at Kiwibank, what are the sort of questions that I would get about improving the performance of my business?
Well, bankers being bankers, we naturally default to the numbers.
Yep.
What's interesting for us is a conversation around historic performance, around how's the year gone. You know, if you're talking about, and we're talking about SME type customers here, typically owner operators. How's the year gone? How's that compared to a year or so that might have gone before? What's gone on in a sales or turnover perspective? What's happened in margins? That's really the key to it all. And then below the margin piece, what's gone on in the expenses lines and that kind of thing. So what's come out the bottom, and conversations around profit versus profitability, because you can be making money, but are you making enough money for the time and energy and blood, sweat and tears and capital that's in it?
Because that's the interesting question you sort of asked to start with, is why are you in the business?
It's spot on. Is it about making money, which is always going to be part of it, you'd think, but is it about lifestyle? Is it a balance of the two? Is it something that was inherited? Is it your technical skills as let's say an engineer means you're in the engineering business? What are the reasons for being in business and what drives people? Because that then probably says where their focus will be on, do they really care as much about the accounts as a banker might, or is there some other drivers behind all of this?
And what sort of tools can you as a bank provide or point people to try and improve those evaluations of performance?
Good question. I mean, we like, we will point people towards a good accounting package, and I won't promote anything in particular, but I think it's important that you have something that extracts as much information from your day-to-day business as it can without you doing some hard work as a business owner, because you've got other things to do. And then that allows the compilation of accounts to be pretty simple and straightforward. The supporting piece behind that is an accountant who can actually provide an advice piece around it over and above just to put the accounts together and make sure the tax is in line, which is all very important. But it's that second piece of advice behind it, and spend some time, much like a banker will, going through on a bit of a line-by-line basis periodically just to see how things really are tracking.
Because there's several different ways you can measure the performance. You're right, there's the cash flow part, which is often important for any small business. Then there's the profit and loss part, because there's a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily cash, but really is important for a business around depreciation and the likes. And then, of course, you've got your balance sheets, your assets and your liabilities and the equity, which a lot of businesses tend to, particularly small businesses, tend to ignore, because they see the cash flow as the most important thing. Talk through particularly the balance sheet part of it.
Sure, and look, that's something that in a small business particularly does get muddled. It's the nature of small business New Zealand, is that the owner's personal world and their personal affairs and their personal assets and those of the business are quite often intertwined. So, a traditional banker view may look and go, equity in the balance sheet doesn't look at a level it should be, and then your private lower, the shareholders have been putting money in through some other channel, whether it's supporting equity from personal assets, whether it's shareholder loans, that kind of thing. It's very often muddled in that small business. It's important that a bank gets their head around that through the conversation with the customer and kind of understands that the customer probably has got a lot in there.
Particularly because in New Zealand, a lot of people borrow against their home.
Absolutely,
for their small business. So it must be quite difficult to keep that separation.
Very, very, because the home is a very easy piece of security, and it can be priced accordingly. So there's a number of attractions why a small businessman or person might mix that with their business. In an ideal world, yes, that'd be personal assets, and you keep them separate, and the business would function on its own. But the way the world operates, particularly here, that's a very functional way and a cheap way for a small business to do that.
And just looking at planning, so we've looked at what's happened in the past, we've had a look at the balance sheet. What about planning into the future, which everyone's busy, they're doing their work day to day. Planning can be useful. What can Kiwibank talk to business people about that on the planning side?
Another good question, and it's something where we put a lot of focus into. As I touched on before, the historical accounts are good to know, and the trends are very interesting, but really what matters is from potentially when the year ended for someone on 31st of March, what's going on since, and what's the next 2 years look like. What does the sustainability look like? Is the market changing that the customer's operating in? What are their competitors doing? Is it just going to carry on? Is there actually a plan? A number of small businesses probably don't have a robust business plan, and I'm not talking about 150 pages. It's just having some genuine written down plans around where you intend to take the business.
What sort of things do you focus on in that plan?
The market piece is really important. So the competitor piece and what the product or services that's being operated in, and we've got obviously some benchmark knowledge because we see more than one business operating in various sectors. And I think it's really important that the customers thought through what it is they do and will it or won't it carry on in the same vein or better. And the next piece, I guess, is if there's some growth aspirations there, which is quite often the case, how's that going to be funded? Because growth is a good thing, but it's also a thing that can put a heck of a lot of pressure on cash flow if it's not thought through and planned for.
And the final piece of the puzzle with planning your business and evaluating its performance is working out about entries and exits. And for a lot of small business people, they've put a lot of work into their business, but come time for retirement or thinking about moving on, that can be a difficult thing to do. How does Kiwibank work with small businesses to think about that exit part of the strategy?
And succession planning is another question, a line of questioning we will go down, and it's often one not thought through, again, part of the planning process. And the second piece is the emotional capital, if you like, invested in the business over the last 10 or 20 years, puts it possibly in an area where the owner values it differently to what it might be if it is out in the open market, or there's assumptions about family succession that actually aren't reality, that maybe the next generation doesn't want to be in their business, and they've seen how it operates and they've got another plan for their own life. So succession planning is really, really important, and as is, if you're going to sell it, as is the robust accounts and having them separate from your personal affairs, because come the day you want to sell a business, it needs to be the business and it needs to look like a business that's attractive to someone, and all this stuff that sometimes seems like information a bank's asking for is actually the same information a buyer will ask for.
So that business of working out how you are actually performing, measuring it, documenting it, and then having some forward-looking parts of that can be really useful for people who maybe do want to sell a business.
Absolutely essential, in my view.
Excellent. Andy Bray there, who's a regional manager for business banking at Kiwibank. I'm Bernard Hickey for interest.co.nz.
Thank you, Bernard.